Only one cashier helped the undercover boss. The ending stuns all. The manager's voice boomed through the store. "Everyone line up. Corporate sent a mystery shopper today. Whoever messed up, just know your job's on the line. Brittany." Froze in place, the plastic smile on her face melting fast. Her hands, gripping a stack of receipts, started to tremble. A quiet panic spread across the employees standing in a row by the registers. No one spoke, eyes darted. Who was it? What had happened? But none of them knew that just 15 minutes earlier, a man in a dirty hoodie had stood right there at register 6, where Brittany was working, asking if he could pay for a bottle of water and a sandwich. With coins, and that man had been the billionaire owner of the entire store chain. That morning had started like any other. Long lines, broken card machines, one too many grumpy customers. Brittany hadn't even eaten yet, and it was already 2 p.m. Rent was overdue. Her son was sick at home with no one to watch him. And her manager, Scott, had been barking orders non-stop like he owned the place, even though he'd only been promoted last week. But she kept her head down, doing her best, hoping no one noticed how exhausted she looked. That's when he showed up. He didn't look like anyone special. The man was scruffy, unshaven, his shoes worn thin. His hoodie was several sizes too big, and his backpack was half-zipped, as if he'd been running. The line behind him groaned in impatience. He placed a sandwich and a bottle of water on the counter. "I'm sorry," he muttered, fishing out a handful of coins. "I know it's not exact. I think I'm short by 65 cents. Brittany looked at him, something about his eyes, tired but kind, and something else, desperation. She glanced at the cameras. She wasn't allowed to override prices or give freebies, not unless she wanted to get fired. The woman behind the man huffed, "Are you serious? Some of us have real jobs to get back to." The man flinched, humiliated, and Brittany paused. Then slowly she reached into her own pocket. She took out a wrinkled dollar bill, her last one, and added it to the till without saying a word. The man stared at her, shocked. "Eat something," she said quietly. "It's all right." His mouth opened, then closed. He nodded a little too emotionally and walked out without saying anything more. Now, standing in the staff lineup, Brittany could feel Scott's eyes drilling into her. "I want the person who broke policy to admit it," Scott barked. "We reviewed footage. One of you gave away store merchandise today. You know we don't allow that." The employees shuffled awkwardly. Brittany's chest tightened. Her ears were ringing. Scott kept going. "What you did might seem nice, but this is business. You made the store vulnerable. That could have been a theft setup. Or worse." A woman from aisle 4 muttered, "I thought it was just a sandwich." Scott turned sharply. "Just a sandwich? Rules are rules. And whoever did it, step forward. Now." Brittany looked down at her shoes. Her son's asthma inhaler had cost her half her paycheck. She couldn't afford to lose this job. No one moved. And then the back office door opened. The same man in the hoodie walked in, but this time he wasn't wearing the hoodie. Now he wore a tailored suit. The entire room froze. Scott blinked. "Sir, I didn't realize you were still here." The man didn't smile. He stepped forward and faced the staff. "I'm Nathan Ellis," he said, voice steady. "I'm the CEO of Ellis Mart." Gasps rippled through the employees. "I came here today undercover," he continued, "to see how my stores were treating people, not just customers, but staff too." Brittany felt her legs go weak. "I dress like someone down on his luck," Nathan said, "because sometimes the way we treat those who look like they have nothing says more than how we treat those who have everything." His gaze landed on Brittany. Only one person here showed compassion. Only one person looked past what I was wearing and saw a human being. Scott's face drained of color. Nathan turned to Brittany. "You, what's your name?" "Be Brittany," she said, barely above a whisper. He nodded. "You gave me your last dollar, didn't you?" She nodded slowly, her eyes burning. The room was dead silent. "You broke policy," Nathan said, and Scott smirked, until Nathan added, "But you upheld humanity. And if a company punishes that, then it doesn't deserve to exist." He turned to Scott. "You called her out, publicly, embarrassed your staff, threatened them." Scott stammered, I was just following protocol." "Were you?" Nathan asked, eyes sharp. "Or were you flexing your new title?" Scott had no answer. Nathan looked at the other employees. "How many of you feel respected working here?" No one raised their hand. "How many of you feel replaceable?" Almost everyone raised their hand, even the senior cashier. Nathan exhaled. "Thank you for your honesty. Things are going to change." He turned back to Brittany. "I'd like you to come with me. You're not in trouble. In fact, I'd like to offer you a temporary role at headquarters while we restructure this branch." Brittany's mouth dropped open. "Me? But I only work here part-time." "You showed the heart I want at the center of this company," he said. "The job's yours if you want it." Behind her, Scott muttered, "She doesn't even have management training." Nathan cut him off with a look. "And yet, she did what you couldn't. Lead with empathy." As the crowd dispersed and the reality of what just happened sank in, Brittany stepped outside, stunned. The parking lot was drenched in sunset light. Her phone buzzed, a photo of her son smiling at home, holding the sandwich she'd left for him that morning. Tears welled up in her eyes. She looked up to see Nathan waiting by a sleek black car. He opened the door for her. "You still hungry?" he asked. "Let's talk over dinner." She laughed shakily. "Is this real?" He smiled. "It's just the beginning." But what Brittany didn't know, what no one knew, was that this promotion was only the start of something far bigger. Because someone at corporate had been watching her for a lot longer than just today. And they were about to expose a truth that could destroy everything. The restaurant was nearly empty, but the tension between Brittany and Nathan was thick enough to fill the room. The faint hum of the air conditioner and the clink of silverware on plates couldn't drown out the storm swirling beneath Nathan's calm exterior. "Why me?" Brittany finally asked, her voice barely steady. "There are dozens of people here who work harder, who have more experience. Why choose someone like me?" Nathan stirred his coffee slowly. "Because, Brittany, most of them see this job as just a paycheck. You see it as a lifeline, not just for yourself but for your son. That kind of heart doesn't grow on trees." Brittany looked down at her hands. "I don't want to screw this up. My son, he's everything. I can't lose this." Nathan nodded. "I'm not just offering you a job. I'm offering you a chance to change everything, for yourself, for the people you work with, and for this company. But it won't be easy." Before Brittany could respond, Nathan's phone vibrated sharply on the table. He glanced at it, and his expression tightened. "Trouble already?" she joked nervously. "More like a storm brewing," Nathan said. He flipped the phone face down. "We're going to need your help sooner than you think." Back at the store, Scott was seething. His pride had been crushed in front of everyone, and he wasn't about to let Nathan's sudden appearance ruin his plans. Later that night, Scott sat in his tiny apartment scrolling through his phone. A message popped up from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow at 8 a.m., the coffee shop on 5th. Scott hesitated. The sender was anonymous, but the message was clear. Someone had dirt on Brittany, and now they wanted Scott involved. He knew he had to act fast. The next morning, Brittany walked into the corporate headquarters, a glass tower that shimmered in the sunlight. She swallowed her nerves and followed Nathan down a maze of corridors, past polished conference rooms filled with suits and whispered conversations. "This place is a whole other world," she whispered. Nathan smiled. "Welcome to the belly of the beast." They stopped in front of a door labeled Employee Experience. Nathan opened it and gestured inside. Inside, Brittany met Julia, the head of HR, a warm woman with sharp eyes. "We've been watching your progress," Julia said. "Your attitude, your empathy, and it's exactly what we need." Brittany tried to smile, but doubts gnawed at her. Was she ready for this? Days passed. Brittany was thrust into meetings, training sessions, and interviews with employees from every store branch. She heard stories of frustration, betrayal, and exhaustion. She listened with a growing sense of responsibility and fear, because she realized this job wasn't just about fixing one store. It was about saving thousands of lives trapped in a broken system. But Scott wasn't the only one watching her. One evening, as Brittany left the building, a figure slipped from the shadows and blocked her path. "Ms. Thompson?" the man said, voice low and urgent. She nodded, heart pounding. "I'm Mark," he said. "I work in corporate security. There are things you don't know, things about Nathan's real intentions." Brittany frowned. "What do you mean?" Mark glanced around nervously. "Nathan isn't just here to help. He's here to expose something. Someone. And that someone is dangerous. You need to be careful." Meanwhile, Nathan sat alone in his office, staring at a folder thick with reports and employee complaints. His phone buzzed with texts from someone labeled Watcher. "They're onto you," one read. He clenched his jaw. "Let them come." Back at the store, Scott met with the anonymous contact, a woman named Laura who worked in inventory. Laura's resentment toward Brittany was clear. "She's an outsider," Laura spat. "She doesn't belong here. If she keeps poking around, she'll bring the whole place down." Scott nodded slowly. "Good. We'll make sure she doesn't last." Brittany's first major assignment was to visit the flagship store in another city, a place Nathan had specifically warned her about. The morning she arrived, Brittany was met with cold stares and whispered rumors. Staff didn't trust her. They saw her as the boss's pet, the outsider. But one cashier, a woman named Amy, stood out. Amy was quiet but sharp. When Brittany asked her about the store's problems, Amy hesitated, then said quietly, "It's not just management. It's everything. They cut hours, ignore safety, and threaten anyone who speaks up." Brittany's heart sank. As she left the store, Amy pulled her aside. "If you really want to help, watch your back. Some people don't want things to change." That night, Brittany's phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the parking garage, midnight. Come alone." Brittany's pulse raced. Was it a trap or a chance to uncover the truth? She knew she couldn't ignore it. The parking garage was empty and dark, except for a lone figure waiting by a silver sedan. "Brittany," the figure whispered. She nodded. "I'm James," he said. "I used to work for Nathan." Brittany's eyes widened. "You what?" James looked around nervously. "I was part of his team, but something went wrong. There are secrets here that could ruin everything." He pulled out a folder thick with documents and photos. "Look at this," James said. "There's a cover-up. Inside Ellismart, illegal layoffs, fake audits, and someone's been silencing whistleblowers." Brittany swallowed hard. "Why are you telling me this?" James looked her in the eye. "Because Nathan can't do it alone. He needs someone who's not afraid to fight back." As Brittany drove home, her mind raced. The weight of what she'd discovered pressed down on her. Was she ready to become the company's unlikely hero, or would the shadows lurking inside Ellismart swallow her whole? Back at headquarters, Nathan watched security footage of Brittany's late-night meeting. He smiled faintly. Good, it's starting. But in the distance, a threat was closing in. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as Brittany sat in her car, hands trembling around the steering wheel. James's words echoed in her mind like a relentless storm. Illegal layoffs, fake audits, silenced whistleblowers. She'd walked into something far deeper and darker than she'd ever imagined. Her phone vibrated with a text from Nathan. "Report in at HQ ASAP. We need to talk." Brittany took a deep breath, wiped the sweat from her palms, and started the engine. Inside the sleek, glass-walled conference room, Nathan waited, his expression grim. When Brittany stepped in, he nodded toward the chair opposite him. "We don't Have much time, Nathan began. James's intel confirms what I suspected. Ellis Mart's rot runs deeper than just mismanagement. There are people inside this company who will do anything to protect their interests, including murder. Brittany's breath caught. Murder? Are you serious? Nathan's eyes darkened. One of our former whistleblowers died in a car. Accident 6 months ago. I don't believe it was an accident. Brittany swallowed hard. So what do we do? Nathan pulled a folder across the table. Inside were photos, emails, and payroll reports showing suspicious activity, employees vanishing from records, falsified audits, and payments to untraceable accounts. We expose them, Nathan said, but we need proof and allies. Brittany nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the mission settling on her shoulders. Meanwhile, at the flagship store, Amy sat in the break room, staring at her phone. The message she just received shook her to her core. You're getting too close. Stop digging or face the consequences. Her hands shook as she showed the text to a colleague, Darren, who looked grim. This is bigger than we thought, Darren whispered. Amy bit her lip. I don't want to back down, but what if they're watching? Back at the corporate headquarters, Brittany and Nathan assembled a small, trusted team. Julia from HR, Mark from corporate security, and James, whose knowledge was vital. We're going to start by auditing the payroll and inventory data, Julia explained. Anything that looks off, we flag. Mark added, we've also installed cameras in key areas. If anyone tries to tamper with evidence, we'll catch them. Brittany felt a spark of hope. For the first time since this all began, she felt part of something bigger, something that could make a difference. But Scott was not idle. Late that night, he met with a shadowy figure in a dimly lit bar, a man known only as the Cleaner, someone who specialized in silencing problems. We've got a situation, Scott said, sliding a photo of Brittany and James across the table. They're digging too deep. The Cleaner smiled coldly. Leave it to me, they won't know what hit them. The next day, Brittany returned to the flagship store, determined to confront Amy and gather more information. Amy was hesitant, but saw the fire in Brittany's eyes. There's a warehouse, Amy whispered. They stash the fake inventory records there. No one is supposed to know about it. Brittany's heart raced. Can you take me there? Amy nodded. But we have. To be careful. I don't trust everyone here. Under the cover of darkness, Brittany and Amy slipped into the back of the warehouse district. The building was old and abandoned, but inside, stacks of boxes bore false labels, inventory that didn't match records, shipments that never arrived but were paid for. Brittany snapped photos with her phone, each image a puzzle piece in the corporate crime. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind them. Who's there? Brittany whispered. A shadow loomed, a man in a dark jacket. Amy grabbed Brittany's arm. Run! They sprinted through the maze of crates and crates, heart pounding, until they burst into the night air. Back at headquarters, Brittany showed Nathan the photos. We need to go public, she said. This is the smoking gun. Nathan shook his head. Not yet. If we rush, they'll bury the story before it starts. We need to protect our sources. Brittany clenched her fists. Every day we wait, more people get hurt. Nathan's phone buzzed again. He read the message silently and then looked up with a grim smile. They know we're close. It's time to make our move. That evening, Brittany got a call from Julia. There's been a break-in at the corporate office, Julia whispered, panic in her voice. Files were stolen, some of them yours. Brittany felt her world tilt. Who? How? We don't know. But Mark's tracking the security footage. Nathan gathered the team in the war room. The tension was palpable. Mark played the footage. A masked figure slipped past security cameras, avoided motion sensors, and stole files from Julia's office. Professional, Mark said. Someone with insider knowledge. Brittany's stomach dropped. This is war. Days later, Brittany, was home when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. A distorted voice said, "Stop digging, Brittany, or you'll regret it." She slammed the phone down, trembling. The threats were no longer anonymous, they were personal. At the store, Scott's plans unraveled. His closest ally, Laura, was arrested for tampering with company records after Mark's team found proof. Scott's rage turned violent. He confronted Brittany in the break room. "You have no idea what you're messing with," he growled. Brittany stared back, unafraid. "I'm fighting for the truth." Scott lunged, but Amy and Darren pulled him back. "Not today," Amy said. Nathan stepped into the fray, announcing a major company-wide overhaul. "Transparency will be our weapon," he declared at a press conference. Brittany stood beside him, exhausted but victorious. As the dust settled, Brittany reflected on the journey. She'd entered as a cashier, struggling to survive. Now she was a catalyst for change. But as she looked toward the horizon, Brittany knew one thing. This was just the beginning. The phone slipped from Brittany's trembling hands as she stared at the message on the screen. "We're watching your every move." No sender, no clue, just a cold, silent threat. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. There was no turning back now. The company's internal turmoil was boiling over. The media had caught wind of the scandal, and headlines screamed accusations of fraud, corruption, and cover-ups. But the deeper Brittany and her team dug, the more they realized the real enemy was not just a corrupt few. It was a whole culture built on silence and fear. Nathan convened the team again in the conference room. His usual calm was cracking under pressure. "We've uncovered layers of deception nobody expected," Nathan said grimly. "The fake layoffs were just a cover-up for embezzlement and bribery, and Scott isn't working alone." Julia nodded. "Our investigation shows several executives are involved. It's systemic." Brittany clenched her fists. "So the rot goes to the very top?" "Yes," Nathan confirmed, "which makes this even more dangerous." Amy was still shaken from the break-in. She confided in Brittany one late evening as they stayed behind after closing the store. "I don't know who to trust anymore," Amy whispered. "I found out some employees were paid off to stay quiet, even some of my friends." Brittany's heart ached. "It's not your fault. They're victims too." Amy nodded but looked haunted. But some people chose greed over loyalty. At home, Brittany's phone rang. The number was blocked. "Who is this?" she asked cautiously. A distorted voice replied, "Stop this nonsense, Brittany. You don't know what you're getting into." She stood her ground. "I'm not afraid of you." The voice sneered, "You will be." The call ended abruptly. The next day, Nathan brought shocking news. "Laura's case isn't isolated," he said. "She was a scapegoat. The real mastermind behind the sabotage is still out there." Brittany's eyes widened. "Who?" Nathan hesitated, then said quietly, "Scott's mentor, Richard Hale, the company's founder's right-hand man." The room fell silent. Brittany realized the battle was no longer just corporate. It was personal. She started receiving strange visits. A car parked outside her apartment, unfamiliar faces watching her from a distance. Fear crept in, but she refused to let it control her. One evening, Amy called Brittany in a panic. "They're threatening my family now," Amy said, voice shaking. "I don't know what to do." Brittany's heart broke for her friend. "You're not alone. We'll protect you." Amy wiped tears. "Promise me, Brittany, if anything happens to me—" Brittany interrupted. "No, we fight this together." The team planned a bold move, leak the full evidence to the press, exposing the corruption and forcing legal action. Julia warned, this could backfire. They might try to silence us before the story breaks. But Brittany was resolute. As the day of the leak approached, tensions reached a breaking point. Nathan confronted Scott in a tense showdown. "You're finished, Scott," Nathan said coldly. Scott laughed bitterly. "You don't even know who you're dealing with." Before Nathan could react, Scott lunged. A fierce struggle ensued, but security intervened just in time. That night, Brittany stayed late at headquarters, preparing the final files. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out. Her heart pounded as footsteps echoed down the hall. A shadow appeared. Richard Hale himself, calm but menacing. "You should have stayed quiet, Brittany," he said softly. She stood tall. Not a chance. The two faced off in the darkened office. Richard revealed his vision for Ellismart, ruthless and unchecked, powered by fear. Brittany countered, "Your empire is built on lies and pain. It ends now." A tense silence hung before footsteps and voices flooded the hall. Nathan and security had arrived, surrounding Richard. In the aftermath, the company began the slow process of healing. Scott and Richard were arrested, facing multiple charges. Amy's family was safe, thanks to increased security measures. Brittany was promoted to a leadership role, her courage inspiring others. As the dust settled, Brittany looked out her office window, reflecting on everything lost and gained. She whispered to herself, "Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find who you really are." Brittany sat in her new office, the late afternoon sun spilling through the windows, casting long golden beams across the polished desk. The chaos that had swallowed Ellismart for months was finally beginning to settle, but the wounds ran deep. Her phone buzzed. It was Amy. "I need to talk. It's urgent." Brittany's stomach tightened. After all they'd been through, was there more trouble? She grabbed her coat and headed to the small cafe where Amy waited, looking pale and tired. Amy wasted no time. "Brittany, I found something." Brittany raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" Amy glanced around nervously. Files, hidden financial documents. More than just Scott and Richard were involved. Brittany's pulse quickened. "Who else?" Amy hesitated. "People on the board. Powerful people. They've been funneling money out of the company for years." Back at headquarters, Brittany and Nathan gathered the core team. Julius spread the documents out on the table. "If this is true, the corruption is systemic, bigger than we imagined." Mark frowned. "That means more people want to keep this secret. More danger." Brittany nodded. "We need to act fast." Meanwhile, rumors swirled in the media, mixing truth with speculation. Ellismart's stock price plummeted, investors fled, and employees whispered in fear and frustration. Brittany felt the weight of the company on her shoulders. Could she save it? Late one evening, Nathan came rushing into Brittany's office. "We have a problem." "What?" "Someone hacked into our secure servers. They deleted crucial evidence." Brittany's heart sank. "How? Who?" Nathan shook his head. "We don't know yet." Brittany spent sleepless nights piecing together what little remained. But the more she uncovered, the clearer the picture became. The conspiracy was vast, and the traitors were closer than she thought. One afternoon, Brittany was called into a private meeting with the company's interim CEO, Robert Klein. "Brittany, your efforts are commendable," Robert said smoothly. "But it's time to think about the bigger picture. The company needs stability. We can't afford more scandals." Brittany's jaw tightened. "And what about justice?" Robert smiled thinly. "Sometimes compromises have to be made." Brittany left the meeting with a sick feeling. Was Robert trying to bury the truth? Was he part of the corruption? Determined, Brittany confided in Amy and Nathan. "We need to be careful who we trust." Brittany said, "The fight isn't over." Days later, Brittany received an anonymous package at her apartment. Inside was a flash drive labeled Proof. Hands trembling, she plugged it into her laptop. Files, emails, videos, evidence of bribes, backdoor deals, even conversations implicating Robert himself. Brittany's breath caught. This changes everything. The next morning, Brittany confronted Robert during a board meeting. "I have proof of your involvement," she said firmly. Robert's face darkened. "You're making a mistake." Suddenly, the room erupted into chaos. Some board members gasped. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Nathan stepped forward. "We're launching an internal investigation. No one is above the law." Robert stormed out, but not before muttering, "You'll regret this." The investigation shook the company to its core. More resignations followed, and several board members faced legal scrutiny. But the pressure took its toll on Brittany. One night, overwhelmed by exhaustion and stress, she broke down in tears. Amy and Nathan found her and offered support. "You're not alone," Amy said softly. Nathan added, "We'll see this through together." Renewed, Brittany devised a plan to rebuild Ellis Mart's reputation from the ground up. She launched employee outreach programs, increased transparency, and worked to restore trust. Slowly, the company began healing. One evening, Brittany received a call from an unexpected source. "Scott, I want to talk," he said quietly. Brittany was stunned. "Why now?" "I want to help," Scott admitted. "I was blinded by greed and fear, but I want to make amends." The team debated the risks, but agreed to hear him out. Scott provided crucial information about the corruption network's inner workings, helping the investigation move forward. Months passed. Ellis Mart survived the storm, emerging smaller but stronger. Employees found hope, investors cautiously returned, and Brittany became a symbol of resilience. But Brittany knew the fight had changed her. She was no longer just a cashier or even a leader. She was a survivor, someone who faced betrayal, fear and danger, and came out stronger. As she looked out the window of her office, Brittany whispered, "Sometimes losing everything means finding your true strength." The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Brittany sat quietly in the gallery, her hands resting on her lap. Today was the culmination of everything she and her team had fought for: justice, truth, and healing. Months of investigations, evidence gathering, betrayals, and close calls had led here. The trial of Robert Klein, Scott, and other corrupt executives. The prosecutor laid out the case clearly, presenting documents, recordings, and testimonies that exposed the depth of corruption and greed that had nearly destroyed Ellis Mart. To serve, defense tried every tactic to discredit witnesses and sow doubt, but the overwhelming evidence spoke for itself. Brittany's testimony was the turning point. She recounted the moments she uncovered the scandal, the fear she felt when threats came, and the strength she found in fighting back. Her voice was steady, but filled with raw emotion. Outside the courtroom, employees, shareholders, and even customers watched anxiously. For many, Ellis Mart was more than a company. It was a community, a livelihood, a family. As the jury deliberated, Brittany returned to the office. The atmosphere was different, hopeful, but uncertain. Nathan approached her, a rare smile breaking through his usually serious demeanor. "No matter what happens, we changed the story. We took back control." Days later, the verdict was announced, guilty on all counts. A wave of relief swept through the courtroom, but Brittany knew this was just the beginning. Rebuilding Ellis Mart meant more than removing corrupt leaders. It meant creating a culture of integrity and care. Brittany was named Chief Ethics Officer, tasked with ensuring transparency and accountability. She poured her heart into the role, meeting employees, listening to their stories, and advocating. For fairness, Amy returned to work, her spirit rekindled. The bond between Brittany and Amy grew stronger, built on trust, forged in fire. But not everyone was ready to forgive. Some long-time employees left, unable to move past the betrayal. Brittany respected their choices. One afternoon, as Brittany walked through the now brightened store, she noticed something. The old cash register where she had once stood, a symbol of her humble beginnings. She ran her fingers over the worn keys, remembering the journey. Suddenly, a young cashier approached her shyly. "Ms. Brittany, thank you. You saved this place. And us." Brittany smiled, a warmth blooming inside. The story of Ellismart became one of transformation, from corruption and despair to hope and renewal. Brittany's journey inspired others beyond the company walls. At a leadership conference, months later, Brittany stood on stage, addressing a sea of faces. She shared her story, the pain, the fear, the betrayals, but also the power of courage and unity. Her final words echoed in the room. "Sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find who you really are, and in that loss, we discover strength beyond what we imagined." Back home, Brittany sat quietly, the weight of the past lifting. She looked at a photo on her desk, a snapshot of her and Amy, smiling despite the hardships. Her phone buzzed, a message from Amy, "Ready for the next chapter?" Brittany smiled and typed back, "Always." The end.